Welcome to Faith and Freedom 250, a special series from the Herzog Foundation. We're telling the story of America's Christian heritage and how it has shaped and at times been challenged throughout our nation's history. Today, we look at the rise of public schools in America and when and why they began to turn secular.
In colonial and early America, it is well documented that churches and religious groups started the very first schools. Their goal, to teach literacy and instill moral values with the Bible as the central textbook. Many of these same groups went on to found colleges, training ministers to shepherd their communities. One of the earliest laws enacted during the Articles of Confederation, the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, tied religion and education together. It stated religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and schools shall forever be encouraged. For the founding generation, this was the educational foundation. But by the early 19th century, society was changing and a new kind of school was emerging.
The nation's movement westward was accompanied by growth in urban areas. As hamlets and villages turned into towns and cities with larger populations, they lost their homogeneous character. Cities attracted a variety of cultures and religious groups from the countryside. They also grew quickly as immigration from Europe increased. This resulted in students from different faiths seeking an education in America. At the same time, as members of the Revolutionary War generation faded from memory, a desire arose to teach not only moral and religious lessons to the youth of the nation, but also to include the ideals of our republic to them. In his tour of the United States in 1824 and 1825, the Marquis de Lafayette noted that education was essential to understanding the rights and responsibilities of members of a free society in America. As an outsider looking into the nation, he recognized that education played a critical role in nation building. The common school movement was amongst the first efforts on a large scale to remake the education system in the young nation. Beginning in 1830, led by Horace Mann in Massachusetts, common schools found substantial support in urban areas. Mann believed that the responsibility of providing education to young people fell to the state and not to individual religious groups, as has been the model for nearly 200 years. He also advocated that education in America should be universal and free. His views still included the need to instill moral teachings to students. The Bible was used, but without an emphasis on doctrinal differences. The moral teachings were non-sectarian in nature, encouraging the breadth of Protestant beliefs. In 1846, Mann declared, quote, "We believe that the Bible should be read in our schools, not to dogmatize the pupils with sectarian opinions, but to strengthen and expand their moral sentiments," end quote.
Mann also saw common schools as places where students could learn their civic duties through education about the American system of government. In 1848, he called them the greatest discovery ever made by man. It does not serve sect or class or party, but pens a fair field and starts the race of life even. The model spread quickly. Standardized education offered free of charge to all classes appealed to many with few or no resources. Immigrant populations were drawn to common schools, even though many of the teachings contradicted their religious beliefs. Meanwhile, a broad interpretation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause began influencing education policy. The text is well known. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Originally intended to prevent a state-sponsored religion and religious tests for office, it was later used to argue against any religious influence in public schools. The often cited wall of separation between church and state did not originate from any of our founding documents, but from a letter Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802.
That interpretation fueled a series of U.S. Supreme Court decisions in the 20th century that supported secular education over religious education. In Everson v. Board of Education, 1947, the court applied the Establishment Clause to state and locally funded schools, virtually ending any state financial support of religious schools. In Engel v. Vitale, 1962, prayer was banned in public schools, even non-denominational prayer. The following year, Abington School District versus Shemp ended Bible reading and reciting the Lord's Prayer in public school classrooms. The court's reasoning was consistent. Public schools are government entities funded by taxpayers and therefore cannot promote religion. These decisions widen the divide between secular and religious education in this nation.
During the 20th century, more and more public schools began presenting themselves as neutral spaces void of any religious influence in a culturally diverse society. Educational institutions became places where religion was ignored more than celebrated or embraced. Education based upon natural law rather than creation theory also took root in secular schools. The thought of teaching both theories and letting the families of students form their own opinions was also shunned.
As with every action, an opposite reaction often results. Since the 1970s, a pendulum swing has occurred in the United States. Many Americans have turned back toward Christian education and homeschooling. Disappointment in public school quality has driven a renewed interest in private faith-based options. This new chapter in American education is still being written, and it's one that may again reshape the nation's future.
For nearly 250 years, America's schools have reflected and sometimes resisted the values that shaped our nation. At the Herzog Foundation, we believe Christian education is essential to preserving those values for generations to come. Join us next time on Faith and Freedom 250 as we continue telling the story of America's Christian heritage.